You want to change, don't you? That's why you're here. There's a part of you that's tired. Tired of the cycles, tired of the noise, tired of pretending you don't feel the ache in your chest each morning. And yet, despite the exhaustion, you haven't given up. You still believe there's something more. Not out there, but in here, within you. I've seen this longing before, in the patients who sat before me, in the seekers who came not just for relief, but for revelation. You are not broken. You are unfinished. Let me be clear, this will not be easy. The next 90 days will not be a journey of comfort. They will be a confrontation between the life you've built to survive and the life that is waiting to be lived. If you truly commit, you will not be the same person on the other side, but you must be willing to face yourself, without defense, without illusion, without excuses. For too long, you've allowed the world to dictate who you should be. You've worn masks to be accepted. You've dimmed your truth to avoid rejection. And in doing so, you've betrayed the self, the real self. What I call the self, not the ego, not the persona, but the deeper center of your psyche that holds the blueprint of your wholeness. The next 90 days are not about becoming someone new. They are about returning to who you were before the world taught you to forget. Begin here, with radical honesty. Each morning when you rise, ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What emotion have I numbed? What part of myself have I disowned? These questions are not for your intellect. They are invitations to descend, to move inward into the unconscious, into the places where your real life is waiting. You must understand this. The shadow does not disappear because you ignore it. It becomes stronger. The more you repress what you do not wish to see, the more it controls you. Your irritability, your compulsions, your anxieties, they are not random. They are messages, signals from the forgotten parts of yourself. The child who never felt safe, the teenager who swallowed shame, the adult who performs strength while quietly unraveling inside. To transform, you must stop running, stop distracting, stop blaming the world for what you have not yet faced in yourself. The next 90 days are not a self-improvement challenge. They are a return to the truth. Each day, I want you to meet yourself, intentionally, courageously, relentlessly, not with judgment, but with presence. You are not here to fix yourself. You are here to meet what you abandoned long ago. That is where the power is. That is where the transformation begins. You will feel resistance. You will want to quit. The ego will whisper that nothing is changing, that this work is foolish. But the ego is terrified of your awakening. Because when the self awakens, the ego must serve a new master. You do not need to believe in this fully yet. You only need to begin. Give yourself 90 days, not to become perfect, but to become real. You've spent a lifetime living in reaction. It's time to live in response to the quiet truth inside you that has been waiting patiently for your return. Let us begin. They won't tell you this, but the moment you stop being available is the moment the world begins to rearrange itself around you. You've been taught to be open, accommodating, endlessly reachable. You answer every call, reply to every message, keep yourself emotionally accessible to people who haven't earned your presence. And you call it kindness, you call it love. But I will call it what it truly is, a pattern of self-abandonment dressed up as virtue. Most people live this way for years without questioning it. They give their time, their energy, their thoughts, their body, while something inside begins to hollow out. They think it's fatigue. They think they're just sensitive. But what they're truly experiencing is the spiritual erosion that occurs when your energy is spent on everything except your own becoming. When you withdraw, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, a transformation begins, not in others, but in you. I am not speaking here of detachment as a defense mechanism. I am speaking of conscious withdrawal as an act of individuation, a decision to stop participating in your own fragmentation. You see, the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society, is necessary. But when you confuse the mask for your identity, you begin to perform for love rather than embody it. The more you adjust yourself to be acceptable, the more you betray the self within. That is why people feel empty after pleasing everyone. They've handed their soul over one compromise at a time. When I speak of withdrawing, I am not speaking of isolation. I am speaking of sacred reclamation. You do not vanish from the world. You vanish from distortion. You stop showing up where your truth is not welcome. You stop engaging in battles that only exist to exhaust you. You stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. There is great power in becoming invisible to what once wounded you. At first, it will feel unnatural. Your nervous system has grown accustomed to proving your worth. You will feel the pull to respond, to explain, to be available to everyone but yourself. But this is the old self clinging to familiarity, and to transform, you must let it burn. You were not meant to be constantly accessible. Your energy is not infinite. Your soul was not designed to be consumed by notifications, obligations, and superficial affirmation. You are here to become who you truly are, not who the world has conditioned you to be. So I ask you this: what might happen if, for the next 90 days, you stopped chasing acceptance? What if you allowed silence to replace your need for validation? What if your solitude was not loneliness, but a sanctuary for revelation? Because that is what you will begin to notice. When you stop being available, your shadow will start to speak. The unhealed parts of you, the abandoned child, the rejected lover, the performer desperate for applause, they will rise, not to destroy you, but to be seen. And your task is not to run. Your task is to remain present, to listen, to integrate. People will sense the shift in you. Some will be threatened, some will be drawn closer, but none of that matters. What matters is that you are no longer performing for belonging. You are remembering that you belong to yourself. Let the withdrawal begin. Let the silence come. Let the pieces you once scattered return home to you. And watch how life starts to meet you where you've always longed to be found. You say you want to transform. You say you want a new life, a new love, a new peace. But each morning, you wake up and make the same choices that led you here. Not because you are weak, but because your unconscious is still running the show. Do not be deceived. Your life is not shaped by what you think you want. It is shaped by what you have not yet faced. The shadow does not simply contain the dark and shameful things you try to hide. It also holds your repeated betrayals of yourself. Every time you said yes when your soul screamed no. Every time you kept quiet to avoid conflict, but left the conversation in pieces. Every time you stayed, just to feel chosen. This is the loop, not a punishment, but a mirror. And until you make the unconscious conscious, as I once said, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. People ask me, why do I always attract the same kind of person? Why do I keep ending up in the same pain? And I answer, because you keep abandoning yourself the same way. You will keep calling it bad luck, bad timing, or other people's dysfunction. But until you see the pattern within you, you will never escape it. Because it is not random, it is ritual. A ritual of rejection that began long before you could name it. Perhaps it began in childhood, when love came only through obedience, when affection required shrinking, when being loved meant being less. And so, to feel safe, you fragmented. You placed parts of yourself into hiding. Your anger, your desire, your boundaries, your voice. You traded your wholeness for belonging. And in doing so, you created a blueprint, a psychological contract with the world that says, I will be what you need, as long as you don't leave. But here's what you must understand. No one can betray you more profoundly than you betray yourself. That is the wound. That is the ache. That is the emptiness that no relationship, no achievement, no amount of validation will ever fill. So I ask you, what if the next 90 days were not about improvement, but about reclamation? What if you stopped trying to become better and instead became honest? Honest about your limits, honest about your resentments, honest about the version of yourself that smiles while dying inside. Because the truth is, you don't need more discipline. You need more self-respect. The shadow is not healed by suppressing it. It is healed by acknowledging where you have split from yourself, where you have made yourself smaller, quieter, softer, just to be loved. For the next 90 days, I invite you to notice every moment you are tempted to self-abandon. When you want to say something, but don't. When you want to walk away, but stay. When you need rest, but perform. Write them down. Observe them without judgment. These are your teachers. You are not here to perfect yourself into worthiness. You are here to remember that you were always worthy, before the pleasing, before the pretending, before the performance. If you can do this, if you can remain radically loyal to your own soul, your life will begin to shift in irreversible ways. You will begin to feel a kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a strength that is not performance, but presence, a self that no longer shatters every time it is unseen. And let me warn you, this kind of change may not make you popular. It will make you powerful, because nothing is more threatening to a world built on compliance than a person who has remembered who they are. You were never meant to bend to fit a life that dishonors your truth. You were meant to burn through illusion, break the loop of self-betrayal, and return whole. So I say it again, do this for the next 90 days. Watch what happens when you stop betraying yourself in the name of love. Watch how life changes when you finally choose you. Radical honesty is not a social skill. It is a spiritual act. It is the soul's refusal to keep living inside a lie. Most people are not living lives. They are performing them. They smile on command, suppress their instincts, and offer versions of themselves sculpted to be accepted. But beneath that performance lives a quiet grief, the grief of a life unlived. And that grief, if you are willing to face it, becomes a doorway. You cannot begin the journey of transformation by asking, "What should I do?" The correct question is, "What truth am I avoiding?" The psyche does not fracture from the truth. It fractures from the lie it has to live in order to survive. I have seen this again and again. A man convinces himself he is content in a career that strangles him. A woman insists she is happy in a relationship where she cannot breathe. A seeker tells himself he has healed, even though every day feels like war. These are not just surface-level errors. These are betrayals of the soul. And the soul keeps score, not with shame, but with silence. It waits, it watches, it sends symptoms, anxiety, fatigue, irritability, numbness. And when those are ignored, it speaks through the body, through illness, through tension, through breakdown, not to punish, but to awaken. If you are exhausted not from doing too much, but from pretending too long, this is your sign. If you feel a persistent ache beneath your daily routine, do not ignore it. That ache is not weakness. It is the whisper of your wholeness calling you home. For the next 90 days, practice truth. Start small. Speak the truth of your body. I'm tired. I need space. This no longer feels right. Then speak the truth of your feelings. I feel unappreciated. I'm afraid. I feel invisible. Finally, speak the truth of your desires. I want more. I want to be free. I want to live my own life. You will tremble the first time you do this. Your voice will shake. Your heart will race, because your nervous system has been trained to fear truth. But I assure you, there is no greater act of self-healing than to say what you mean and mean what you say. In psychological terms, this is the beginning of integration. The false self, the persona, begins to lose its grip. And the real self, the authentic self, the self that you buried beneath years of adaptation, begins to emerge. I do not promise comfort. Truth often leads to rupture. But I promise clarity. I promise energy returning to your body. I promise an inner alignment that no external approval can ever replace. People around you may resist this change. They were never in love with your truth. They were in love with your performance. But do not let their discomfort become your ceiling. Every time you speak a truth you used to silence, you are rebirthing yourself. And what happens after that? The world begins to respond differently. Not because it changed, but because you did. You become magnetic. Why? Because truth resonates. Integrity has a vibration. And when you embody your truth, you draw in others who have done the same. You stop being available to those who only loved your wounds. You stop playing roles you never auditioned for. You stop chasing connection that requires your self-erasure. Instead, you attract what aligns with your essence, not your performance. This is how life transforms, first through discomfort, then through alignment. The next 90 days are not about improvement. They are about honesty. They are about walking through the fire of truth and discovering that you are still standing. So begin. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now say what you mean. Leave what no longer fits. And watch the life that was always meant for you begin to rise from beneath the rubble of who you used to be. For those who have stayed with me until now, I must tell you, this final stretch is not a destination. It is a return. Transformation is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming who you were before the world taught you to be small. The false self, the persona, was never meant to be permanent. It was a tool, a mask, a strategy for survival in a world that demanded conformity. But over time, many confuse that mask for their face. They forget who they are beneath it. This final phase of the 90-day journey is about removing the mask with reverence, not violence. You do not destroy the persona. You thank it for what it gave you, and you choose to live from the deeper center within. That center is what I called the self, not the ego, not the image, but the wholeness within you that has never been broken. Not once, not even at your lowest point. Now, what does living from the self truly look like? It means that you are no longer driven by compulsion, by people-pleasing, by fear of rejection or shame. It means you do not seek love by abandoning yourself. You do not seek purpose by proving your worth. You no longer chase what was always meant to find you when you finally stood still. Living from the self is calm. It is quiet. It is powerful, not because it shouts, but because it doesn't need to. Let me speak plainly. You will be tested. Old patterns will resurface. Familiar pain will knock on your door wearing new faces. The ego will tempt you to go back to the familiar discomfort you used to call love. But now, you have something you didn't before, awareness. You see the pattern. You feel the shift. You catch the projection before it becomes a storm. And most importantly, you now have the courage to choose differently. That is what the last days of this journey are about. Not perfect execution, but conscious repetition. Returning again and again to yourself. To integrate your shadow, not by destroying it, but by seeing it clearly. To recognize the anima and animus within, the sacred feminine and sacred masculine energies, finally reconciled and dancing in harmony. To embrace solitude not as punishment, but as power. And perhaps most difficult of all, to let go of who you thought you had to be, in order to become who you truly are. This is individuation, the goal of all true inner work. Not success, not popularity, but the quiet, powerful, unmistakable experience of being whole. So here is what I ask of you now. In the final weeks of these 90 days, notice what no longer fits, and release it without guilt. Speak only what you mean, and let silence protect your peace. Create spaces for your soul to breathe and watch what rises in the quiet. Choose depth over speed, solitude over noise, integrity over acceptance. And know this, the reward is not applause. The reward is alignment, peace, clarity, energy that no longer leaks from your body every time you betray yourself. This is how your life transforms, not by force, but by resonance. Not by chasing, but by standing still long enough to hear the truth that's always been whispering beneath the noise. And now, I will leave you with this. If you've watched this far, it means something in you has already begun the transformation. Something in you is ready to stop performing, to stop surviving, and to start living from the center of your being. So I invite you to do this. For the next 90 days, walk with yourself. All of you. Not just the polished parts, but the messy, misunderstood, and magnificent wholeness you have always been. Say it with me now, this time out loud, even if your voice shakes. I choose truth over approval. I choose alignment over performance. I choose myself, not the version they wanted, but the one I finally remembered. If this message reached you, speak back. Let me hear from the soul behind the screen. Drop a comment below. What spoke to you most? What part of you was waiting to be seen? And if you want more of this journey, more depth, more shadow, more light, subscribe and stay close. The journey continues, not because you're broken, but because you're becoming whole. Your path is yours to walk, but you do not have to walk it alone. Thank you for listening. Now go and begin again. Carl Jung.